Okay, guys, well done. Let's take another look up here now again, and we'll do some more. Well done on getting that all sorted. Most of you have got to grips with that. If you haven't got it sorted yet, don't worry. I'll be around again in a minute, and I'll give you a hand. A couple of points that came up. It's worth remembering that, you know, every tag that opens must close. So if you have a begin body, you must have a slash body at the end to pair up with that. All of the content of the page goes after the body and before the slash body. So all of the content of the page is inside in that body section. Anything that's in the header isn't going to appear on the page, or shouldn't. Which brings me to another point. If your HTML is wrong, most browsers will do a very good job of displaying it. They'll give it a lash, and a lot of time they'll do fine. The problem for you as a student of HTML is that you'd actually probably prefer if they had a tizzy fit and told you to fuck off. Do you mean you've no way of knowing if it's wrong from just looking at the page? Okay, so just because the page displays okay doesn't mean the HTML is correct. And that can be quite frustrating. I mean, if I give you an assignment to do and you spend hours and hours on it and you look at it, you know, you test it thoroughly and it looks great, and there's loads of errors in the HTML, you're going to get a really, really poor mark. And that's going to be very frustrating. So a little later, I show you places where you can go to check your HTML for mistakes. But of course, the ideal solution would be not to make those mistakes in the first place. So every single tag that opens must close. That's the most common mistake people make. They forget to close things off. They remember to open them, but forget to close them. One other thing that came up was, generally, if you have like a H1, I mean, you could say, I don't like the way that looks. I actually want it to be in italics too. I want it to be in italics also, you know. And you could say slash italics there. Now, technically, that's kind of correct, you know. But we don't do that usually. Okay? Typically, if you ask for a H1, you get whatever H1 the browser does. If you say to the browser, I want a H1, can you do that in your H1 style for me, please? The browser will go away and display that H1 in whatever way it does H1s. And you should really just accept that. Now, we see later in the module, you can say to the browser, when you're doing your H1s, I'd like you to do them, you know, this way and that way. But you'd still only say in the code, that's a H1, that's a H2. Now, this is a very subtle but very important point that we'll come back to again and again and again. And there are quite a few things that aren't wrong, but they're, you know, we don't do things that way. And hopefully by the end of the module, you'll have a much clearer idea. It'll probably be harder for you if you've done a bit of HTML before, because the place you learned it before, or the person that taught it to you before, probably wasn't as concerned about those issues as we will be in this class. For example, if you learned HTML before, you probably just learned BR rather than BR/. But any tag that stands alone will end in a slash. So every tag that opens must close, and the ones that don't have partners, they open and close all in the one go.
Why do you ever written 3 times?
So we can go down 3 times. So go on to new line 3 times, so it just makes more space. Okay. I think the TT, that tag is probably on its way out. You probably won't see that again. Now, what I'd like to show you now is how to include an image on a page. So here we have this man here standing guard, and if we look at the HTML for an image looks like this. Hope we can fit it all on the screen. So we have IMG, which is short for an image tag, and then it has a number of attributes, we call them. So this is the tag, and then all of these things that are specifying or providing more detail about the tag, they're called attributes. The first attribute here, SRC, this tells you the name of the image file. So in this case, it's soldier.jpg. If you just specify the name of the image like this, then the browser will expect it to be in the same folder as this page is. So if this page is in your H drive in Web Dev Fun, the image must also be on the H drive in your folder called Web Dev Fun, and not in My Photos, for example. Alternatively, you can specify the full complete path of the image. So you might find an image on a web page and decide that you want to link directly to that rather than have a local copy of it, and then you'd be looking at http:// www.cnn.com/ whatever blah de blah. But what I'm going to get you to do is to copy an image, just copy an image locally to your machine, find an image you want, and make sure you know the name of it and do it that way. One problem is when you download an image, it might be soldier.jpg, it might be soldier.jpeg, or it might be a .gif, or it might be a PNG. Depending on how the machine here is configured, just listen up now, guys, okay? And you'll have plenty of time later. Depending on how the machine you're using is configured, some machines will hide from you the extension of a known file type. So if you had soldier.jpg, it would just show you soldier as the file name. Now that's fine, if it's like, pictures of your birthday party, But if you're making a web page, you really need to know whether it's .jpg or .jpeg or .gif or .png. So you might find settings where you can change the settings in the operating system to make sure that it always shows you the complete file name. And for your home machine, if you have a machine at home, you just have that set by default. You'll always want to see the full, complete file name. Here you can see the file name. If it is being hidden, you can get info on the image file, and it'll give you the full file name. You'll need the exact name of the file for this SRC part here. If that's going to work, the name has to match perfectly. We also specify the width and the height of the image, and we always do that. If you don't do that, the image will display at whatever size it happens to be, which isn't the end of the world. But for the HTML to be correct, you must specify the width and the height. Typically, the width and the height that you will use would be the natural width and the height of the image. If you take a small image, let's say 100 pixels by, let's say it was 50 pixels by 50 pixels, and you display it at 500 pixels by 500 pixels, it'll look crap. So you probably don't want to do that. However, if you take an image that's 500 pixels by 500 pixels, and you squeeze it down using the width and height attributes to 50 pixels by 50 pixels, it'll look fine. But that's a bad idea also, because when you're downloading a page you know, when someone is downloading your page from the internet, I mean, they're paying to download that image. Now, they're not paying per megabyte probably, you know, but at the same time, there's a cost, even if it's just to the environment of that. Certainly the page would take longer to download. An image that's 500 pixels by 500 pixels is, what, 100 times bigger than a picture image that's 50 by 50? So you'd be downloading a file that's possibly 100 times bigger than it needs to be. So that's a bad idea too. So if the original default natural size of the image is much greater or much smaller than what you're specifying in the width and the height, then you're probably, you know, doing something you shouldn't be doing. This alt then is what will appear in the placeholder for the image while it's downloading. Now, as it happens, if you're in the developed world, you know, all these things download pretty much, as far as you're concerned, instantly. If you're on a very, very slow connection, the image might be taking a while to download, and you could see in the meantime what the image was going to be. Also, if for some reason the image doesn't download, the contents of this alt attribute here will be displayed. But the main reason we do it is that the person viewing the page, for example, might not be able to see. Maybe they're using a screen reader or something. And so that software would be able to say the alt tag here is a soldier. So the person viewing that page would at least know what the picture was supposed to be of. So there are a number of, originally it was because connections were slow, but there are also usability reasons why you do it. And if it's not there, it's wrong. Okay, there are standards, like ISO standards, you know, like almost like, you know, ISO, you know, 9000 and stuff. Like there are proper standard ways to do things, and you'll be expected to write HTML that complies with the standard. So there's a reason to do it, but the main reason you're going to do it is if you don't do it, it's wrong, and you'll lose marks. So that's reason enough for you to do it. And then at the end, we have a slash there, okay? Image tags don't occur in begin-end pairs. It's a standalone tag, so it opens and closes in the one go. So an image tag must have the source in order to display the image. If you had nothing else, it would probably look okay on the web page. It would just be way wrong. You must have the width and the height and the alt and the slash for it to be correct. So in terms of doing this, if you find an image on the web that you want, Google something. In Google, you can usually see on the right there, you can see, you know, view full-size image or something, whatever. If you look at that, then you'll be looking at just the image. Okay? You can right-click on that and save it to your folder. Then you can go look and see what the name is. You can use that name in the SRC, or you can change the name to something that's more agreeable to you. But you must make sure you know exactly what the name of the image is, and that you put exactly that into the SRC. And you must make sure that the image is in the same folder as the web page, because the browser is going to look for this image in the same folder as this page. Is everybody clear in that? So that's your next mission.
If you change the width and the height to the resolution, would that just act as like a background?
No. No. It won't be a background, no. It'll appear in the page. So it's going to appear in the page. Like if you have text in your HTML, and then the image, and then more text, the image will appear between the two pieces of text.